to take a picture because I look really cute right now.
They sign the chart.
The fact that you just spoiled the book, though.
We gonna cut that out. Hi, everyone. I'm brittwriterly. This is my channel. Welcome back to another episode of Writerly Conversations. This is a book and author tube where I talk about the intersections of literature and culture, ABC 1, 2, 3. If you like the alphabet and you like numbers, maybe poke around, see if you like what you see. If you like what you see, then hit that big red button and we can be internet friends. This is one of my favorite collaborations that I do. It's not actually the only collaboration that I do, and I'm happy to devote more energy to it. So I'm going to let my lovely co-host introduce herself, and then we're going to get into this really, really exciting topic. Exciting to y'all? Maybe no, but exciting to me? Absolutely. Shay, take it away.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shay, and my channel is Shay with the Hobbies. I be reading, I be writing, I be creating. If that's something that you think you could get into, mosey on over to my channel, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. But wait, I, like all my content, is Black with a big B, so you are forewarned.
Okay, that's us. If you're new here, feel free to introduce yourself in the comments because we be looking.
Yeah, and we really do like go to each other's videos and like respond to the comments, so it don't be like we don't actually both pay attention. We do.
Because where
get that notification, it'd be like, someone liked your comment. It was
that's
me.
us.
It was me.
That's us. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about faith. So we talk about a lot of different reps. BookTube talks about a lot of different like reps that you see in books, but one of the reps that we don't see talked about explicitly a lot is books that deal with faith or spirituality. And as writers who are both of faith, I'm a Christian. I will let Shay speak for herself. But as writers who are both of faith, and as someone whose faith and relationship to God is very important, it influences my writing. It influences what I feel I can write, because as we've said in different videos, writing is a ministry, right? Like God invested this gift in me and I want to use it to glorify him. And I don't want to feel pressure to compromise. Of course you feel pressure, you can't help that, but how you respond to it, you can. And so Shay and I, and Deidre actually read a group of books together by this Christian writer named Frank Peretti. They're really, really great books. So we're going to talk about one of his duologies and one standalone. And we're just going to sort of talk about how those books made us feel, what they told us about reading books of faith that maybe we had not been sure about, what they told us about writing books of faith maybe we had not been sure about. And I am having a lot of new experiences because this is my first time reading these books. Shay is the one who got me on to reading these books, and she's read them all multiple times. So I'm sure my realizations will be like, I had never seen, and that was a revelation. It was so encouraging to see. Whereas Shay will probably be like, I always loved it because of X, Y, and Z. So just putting that out there, it's going to be two different kinds. It's going to be two different flavors of reaction. But I'll let Shay sort of give her opening thoughts about writing and reading faith.
Okay, so so I've talked about this many times. I was raised in a very strict Christian home. And so there is no part of me that'll ever be like, I don't believe in God. Like that can't be me. So I consider myself a follower of God, not a Christian, specifically because of how Christianity likes to operate inside of America. And we know America operates in a system of white supremacy. So, me and God have our relationship, and, I read the Bible, I read other things. He tells me what, we just be having conversations. Okay. Like that's what happens. And so these books for me, even with like being like, I don't subscribe to what most people that I know and that are Christians do, because most people I know that are Christians that subscribe to things I don't believe in are Caucasian. There happens to be that do we believe in the same God? Do we believe the same things? Conversation. And then I read Frank Peretti and I'm reminded that, we do. We do. There are some people that like we believe in the same thing, because there are some things that are just immutable. Like they're not going anywhere. They're just there. They just are. And I like that about his work. I like that no matter where I am at any particular time, spiritually or mentally or emotionally, his books always hit home for me. There's always a lesson to be learned. And I would even go as far to say that now that my grandmother has passed, I feel like it's an even more personal experience because he was also her favorite author as well. And so it's just that even rereading these since she has passed and reading them with you guys has been just that even made the experience even better of the words, because getting to like talk to other people about it, especially because like part of the reason she knows so much that I like about Frank Peretti is he's the one author that I recommend to everybody, like everybody, Christian or not Christian, atheist or, you know, whatever, like, because regardless to what you believe, the writing is just there. And I have yet to meet anybody, Christian or not, atheist or not, who like didn't just that I recommended it to. Now you somebody recommended it to you and you don't like it, that's on you. I ain't told you to read it and you didn't like it is all I'm saying. And so I think that I'm just really excited for this conversation. I'm really excited. I'm excited. Yeah, I don't know what else I'm supposed to say. Did I answer? What did I do?
I just like opening thoughts.
Opening thoughts is I'm excited for this. Because so here's the thing is, outside of like family and friends, which I mean, we're friends, so this is still not that. I haven't really had bookish people to talk about these books with, is what I mean more so, right? So like I'm excited for that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, that, and I mean, and Shay, you know, because we are friends and also critique partners. So like we'll talk about things like, oh, this made me squeal. And then as a writer, be like, I'm really struggling to engage this topic in my writing. I'm not seeing a lot of books in trad pub that look at this. I'm looking for agents, and I'm seeing a lot of agents say on their manuscript wish list, I don't want any books that talk about spirituality. I don't want any books that talk about Western religion, which I'm like, the Bible starts at the beginning of the world, and they are most definitely in Africa. So it's interesting.
Most definitely in Africa. Definitely.
So I'm just like,
talking about the Tigers and Euphrates River. Like, we're talking about rivers that are only on one continent, is all I'm saying, bro.
Right. Like, and then we're in the Middle East. I'm just like, it's just very interesting how Christianity gets tagged as.
Right, because so much of it is seen through Western eyes, which is right.
Which is bound up in colonialism, and we understand that.
Exactly.
But I'm just like, imagine how tired we are. Like, I'm just so tired of Christianity being tagged in a Western religion, like God belongs to the West. That's not true. But at any rate, for me as a writer who is thinking deeply about like, okay, well, how do I honor God in my writing, to see so many agents be like, was discouraging, because I was just trying to write YA fantasy. So it was just like, that was something I had to tussle with. And reading Peretti, even though he's in the Christian fiction genre, reading Peretti still was just like, freak it. Like, if people don't read Frank Peretti's books because he's in the Christian fiction genre, they are missing out. Like, that's it. It's like, it says nothing to the quality. It says nothing to the plot. It says nothing to the prose. Like, it's just good. And so whereas I had been hesitant to look at agents or publishing houses or anything that were like Christian fiction specific, now I'm just like, it is what it is. And that actually takes us into our first question. So our first question is, and these are more like headings of the conversation than like real questions, because, you know, they're really broad. But the first question is the setup, the framework, the premise, hooking an audience. So we're talking about this as readers and writers, right? So we're going to start with the duology, this Present Darkness and then Piercing the Darkness. So we're going to start with this Present Darkness, which is book 1. And I'm just going to read the description for you. And Shay has them both in hardcover, obviously, or in hard copy, they're paperbacks. So the quick description
is I do have them in hardcover because I got multiple copies
of course.
Of
course. So the summary for this Present Darkness, which is the first in the duology, Ashton is just a typical small town, but when a skeptical reporter and a prayerful pastor begin to compare notes, they suddenly find themselves fighting a hideous New Age plot to subjugate the townspeople and eventually the entire human race. The battle rages in the spirit world between Rayfar, leading his legions from the world of darkness, and Tau leading his army of angels. The battle is unseen by the townspeople, but they feel its presence in the vortex of evil threatening to annihilate them. Pastor Hank Bush and newspaperman Marshall Hogan join the battle and lead the human crusade against the evil demons. The fighting is vicious and the outcome is unforgettable. It's good. It's good. So thinking about the setup, the framework, the premise, hooking an audience, right? So starting with just like the setup and starting with the premise, I love the premise of structuring the book around spiritual warfare. And I love the setup of it's a multi-POV book. You get Pastor Hank Bush, his POV, you get a little of his wife's POV as well. I just have to say, I love Hank and Mary. Them's my friends. I love them. I would send them a Christmas card. I really would every year. I love them. So you get their POV. You get Marshall Hogan's POV. Marshall is like should I call him a rash? I don't know. It's a little prickly beginning, but eventually it resolves itself, and you're like, well, that happened, and I'm stronger for it.
The way I would describe Marshall is a Sunday Christian.
Very much so.
Marshall's a Sunday Christian, and you get to see
my prime minister column.
Right. Or Easter Christian. Easter Christian, Mother's Day Christian. Right.
Yeah, them CMEs. Christian Mother's Day and Easter.
Christian Mother's Day, Easter. Right. We know.
We know.
So, the funny part is, I'm gonna let you get back to this because it's just funny. So when Britt was reading it, she was going off about Marshall, and I was like, well, in my head, I was like, girl, he's not saved. I don't know what you expect from this man. He just go to church. And she's like, I just don't know why. And I'm like, because he just go to church. And I'm like, she'll get there eventually. Because I was like,
he is working my nerves.
He is not. No, he don't know nothing about nothing. He just been going to church because people been telling him to go to church. And for me, it always goes back to the number one thing I say when it comes to God. There's a difference between religion and relationship. You can tell who has a relationship and who doesn't throughout all these stories. But go ahead with you're talking about Marshall.
Yeah, an edge. He resolves himself, but the man's an edge. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so you get Marshall's POV. You get Tau, the leader of the angelic hosts. You get Rayfar. So like getting everyone's perspective, believer, non-believer, angel, demon, seeing how everyone is approaching the same problem of the spiritual warfare, but you really see it sort of is like a spin on perception as reality. Like, yes, your perception influences what you understand of reality, but whether or not Marshall believed, not believed in God because he did, whether or not Marshall had a real relationship with God did not change the fact that he was under attack, right? It just changed the effectiveness with which he was able to fight back. But so I think that's just an interesting and well-received message that, like, yes, your perception influences your reality, but your perception in and of itself does not shape the reality. It influences how you're able to interact with reality, for better or for worse. And so like the multi-POV really helps you see how everyone is responding to the spiritual warfare based on what they believe. And so I loved the setup and the premise and how it was framed structurally. And for the hook, and then I'll pass it to Cachet. Pass it to Cachet. What I really got from the hook as a writer goes back to me being like hesitant to submit my books under the Christian fiction label, which is like, people choose books based off what the book says it's going to do. Everyone is not going to read the same thing. Like when you are on submission, not on submission, when you are querying agents and they say like, who is your target audience? What are some books that you could comp to? That's so they can figure out how to market your book to a specific audience. Everyone is not going to like everything. Shay didn't like fantasy before I forced it on her, and she still don't read it every day. Like it's just not her go-to. So it doesn't matter how bomb my fantasy is. If Shay was just like, I do not want to read any more YA fantasy, then she's just not going to read it. So what's the purpose of me saying, well, it's sort of like
that would be true. And that would be true. I don't want to read no more.
I'm good off that. Nothing I could do would change that. And it wouldn't do me any good to be like, well, they are sort of adolescent-like people who are engaging in things that may or may not be realistic. Are you saying it's YA fantasy? Like tricking readers into picking up your book is not going to get them to the end of the book. It's just going to make them resent you for manipulating your marketing. And so for me,
and they're gonna hate tweet and they're gonna give you a bad review, and they gonna like,
it's so good.
Like, more times than not, I've seen so many reviews is, I thought this was this, but it's this. I thought, and they were 1 star for that. And it's just like tricking people. Like, no, it's not.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It does not work. It doesn't work for your ratings. It doesn't work for your reviews. It doesn't work for your marketing. Like it's no good, because even though a discerning reader could be like, oh, this person was never gonna like this book, all that they're gonna see is the 1 star and the I hated this, that, and third, right? And so for me, I was like, wow, I picked up this book knowing that it was Christian fiction, and knowing what the stigma of Christian fiction is, that it's very preachy and it's very like cliche and da-da-da, but I want to read a book about faith where God is a real factor. And so I'm picking up this book, and that is what I want. And that's what I got. And it was chef's kiss. If I don't want that, as Shay has said, if you don't want that, you don't pursue that. So as a writer, I really had to be like, if you want that, if you want to write that, you're going to have to pursue that. And pursuing that includes tagging it honestly, and then letting honest seekers come. And people who don't want it, baby, they don't want it. They wouldn't want it if it was YA fantasy. They don't want it. And so reading Peretti was really sort of like it clicked for me, like, I'm really enjoying myself, but this is what he said it was going to be. I would not be enjoying myself if he had tagged it somewhere else in books that I do like, and I had gotten this instead. Right. And so that for me was just like part of the premise, the framework, the setup, and hooking an audience. Part of hooking an audience is being honest with your hook. Right. So those are just sort of my initial thoughts about this person in darkness. Pass it on to Shay. Pass it on to Shay.
So for me, it was like angel demon warfare was just that was the hook for me. Like I really was like, oh, there's people, I guess. I really only care about
humans. Oh,
and please. I'm not gonna lie, to me, the best writing in the book is the angels and demons. I feel like, and it could also be like the time frame for when the book came out. Now that I've read so much more than I had like read at the time that I initially started reading his, I felt like the human thing, the human interactions were very simplified, but I do feel like it fit for the audience, like it fit for who you were writing for. So like, I don't think it's around that. But
this
I
was
remember
1986, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's like the late 80s, like, right. And exactly, because like I remember growing up and like Christians being like, he's the like Stephen King of Christian fiction. Like his work was so scary and so like deep and and like to me it wasn't ever scary, it was fascinating.
Yeah.
And just the thought of like angels and demons, because like as a kid, I have been fascinated with like how wrong our description and our picture of angels is compared to how the Bible actually describes them. Like they are hideous. There's a reason that whenever people saw angels, there was fear and trembling. Like they were scared. They have 4 freaking heads. And so I liked reading his, and it hooked me because I was like, I feel like this man is going to give us this. he's going to give us this. And he does not disappoint. He does not disappoint on that front of giving you like, and I love, I remember when me and Deidre were reading and Deidre was texting me, she was like, I just love that the angels are from everywhere. Right. Because they're from everywhere, right? Like you got an angel from everything. And I don't care. Like it wasn't checkbox time. We just got the checkbox time now. 1986, there was no checkbox time.
Right.
You wrote what you wrote. He could have made all the angels white and he did not.
Right.
And he clarified too. Like he didn't just say white, he'd say European. Like he would tell you where they were from. He was very specific.
It was global. Which again, it's not a Western phenomenon.
It's not. And I loved that it was like very intentional. It felt very intentional to me. And so for This Present Darkness, I feel like, because I feel like it's his first book, if I remember it correctly. And it's like, you have something here. You have something here. And I just, you know, when I started my channel, I was working on Jesus Never Went to College. And I remember talking to Britt about it. And I was like, oh no, I'm not going to traditionally publish this. Like, no, like I don't want anyone's hands to touch this because you're not compromising this message. Because I know that as a Black woman, I can't put it in Christian fiction because I'm going to touch on some stuff y'all not going to want. Y'all not going to want to touch this. When I talk about y'all talking about laws, but then not really caring about Black babies dying when you see them in real life, like there's so much more to the conversation, right? And I remember back then, like having that conversation, and I remember being like, I want to tell Britt that this is what she needs to do. But like, I didn't know how to have that conversation. But I was like, that was the day that I was like, I think you should read Frank Peretti. I think you like him. Now, mind you, that was 2020. It's 2022. Full circle moment. Like
the Lord works in his own time.
He does. And he works in his own timing, because it was definitely 2020 when I was like, you should
like, oh, Peretti, okay, yeah.
Right. And I was like, I would be like, I know he's a Wahite man. I know. But to this day,
very much not into it in 2020.
Jemison is love her. Everything is an auto buy. But it's always gonna be a Peretti Jemison for me. Because we ain't even got to the oath yet. But man, a metaphor for a whole dang novel.
I think it's like also just the relevance. Like you can learn so much from Jemison, like she does a masterclass, but you can also just learn so much from her and just like really going through her books, the way that she writes, the way she structured all these different things, right? But for me, and I think it was Alice Walker who said it in Search of Our Mother's Gardens in the very beginning, artists need a model. And so it's like, what you don't need just one. You can have many models. It's great if you can have many models. But when you are trying to foreground what your mission is, what is the thing that you cannot afford to be hidden or tarnished or compromised or overwhelmed? What's that thing? And for me, that thing is not fantasy. That thing is faith. The fantasy will come in the way that I communicate the message. But the thing that I can't allow to be obscured is faith. And so Peretti is a really good example for me about how to do that in a way that, again, like it's not cliche, it's not preachy, it's not just like, that was a very spontaneous character development. Like, if nothing else, these characters are hard-headed, which is realistic. People don't just yield to good sense. Even if they don't just yield to wisdom, they don't just yield to the Bible. Like, they don't just yield to things. They're gonna have to knock their heads a few times and try to fix things a few wrong ways before they're just like,
the way that it's super clear that like as humans we fall back on the old standards, but it takes a while to fall back on the old standards. Like
you gotta try everything else.
I think is right. You're gonna try everything that you can until you realize, oh wait, no, I can't do this alone. And he makes it like abundantly clear, and you're reading it and you're like, I've done this. I know.
Oh yeah, I was like, there was much judgment for Marshall. There was more judgment in the oath. But like, even then you can really see like this character is very annoying and also, dare I say, familiar. in a personal way.
Right.
When
was the last time I was this hard-headed?
Yesterday? 5
Okay.
minutes ago, I don't remember.
Right.
Like, God, you be looking at me like this? Man, let me pray real quick, because it is crazy. So yeah, definitely the hook for me, the model, everything was just like the honesty with which he pursued the business that he was about. He never minced words about it.
Yeah, I remember right after I wrote the Karma Always Comes Back that went into the anthology, I had started reading The Visitation. And he wrote like a paragraph about this character being afraid and never used fear, afraid, or any of the words that we would think to use for fear, right?
Yeah.
He just described how she was in that moment. And I knew she was afraid. And I was like, why didn't I read this before I started rewriting the story? Because like the truth is, and we said this the other day, to be a good writer, you have to read.
You have to. You got to find your models.
Right. And the way that there's so many things that I've learned or even ideas that I've gotten just in us reading these 3 books the last, month and a half? Because it ain't really been that long. Nope. We kind of devoured 3 in no time.
Yeah. Which is like these audiobooks are like 17, 18 hours long. Epics for me are an auto no. So the fact that I read them, like that just tells you how compelling the story is.
Right.
Okay. We sort of have talked about like the story in broad terms. I want to talk about also, this is like really specific, like writerly concern, how to mark character development without being preachy. Because again, that's one of the major cliches about Christian fiction is, oh, it's so preachy, it's you should do this, that, and the third, da, da, da. So how to mark character development without being preachy. And I'll let you start because I've been starting all of them.
Oh, no worries. So this is something that was like definitely my concern with Jesus Never Went to College. Because like I wanted to put that, like I wanted the story to start off with like, she has this Christian background, but it's something she's been doing, not something she's been living. And so that as you see her go through these situations, you realize, and she realizes that like you have a very rocky foundation. Right. And I think that the way in which I wanted to do that was very much so like modeled after The Visitation and This Present Darkness, in the fact that there's like what's the scripture that says like a form of godliness but denying its power? Like that it exists, that it's there, that it's a thing, but you're not willing to give it, you're not willing to give it what it deserves, right? And so I think that what I love that Peretti does, especially in The Visitation, is like that there's this pastor that has like lost all sight of God, right? Like not in he's out there like sinning or anything, but like him and God is on a like, I know you exist, it's what's up, that's it relationship. Like his wife is gone, the church that he was in was not, like everything is just, I'm just gonna sit in my house and just not do nothing. I don't want to do nothing, I don't want to talk to nobody. And so throughout the story, you're going back in time through like all the different times and interactions that he had with God, like when he was a kid and he gave his life to God and what that meant and all these different things and all these moments where he didn't have a relationship, he was just going through the motions. And because he was going through the motions and not really doing the work, it had an effect on him. And so in This Present Darkness, you get that with Marshall, right? You get that in Piercing the Darkness with Lucy Brandon, right? Like you didn't like what was going on in the school with your daughter. You chose a Christian school because something about that felt right to you. Something about that felt right. And even when you started to believe that your daughter was possessed, you was like, in the name of Jesus. Now the demon did laugh at you and was like, that name out your mouth, you funny, you thought, but still, right? Like, and so I think that it's really hard to do when what you're trying to do is write a message instead of what you're trying to do is tell a real story. Does that make sense? Because I feel like that's what he did with these stories. They are stories that are very real and the people feel very real in them. It doesn't feel like you're getting a message. Like you get a good ways into the oath before you even know anybody's a Christian. And the person that's a Christian, he definitely got some mental health issues going on, right? And so there's that, right? He's a convict, right? Like he's an ex-con. Like there's so much going on, right? And there's so much of the ex-con being a Christian and how they try to use that against him, and right, like all these different things, but it's very accurate to the world. And for me, I think that that's what made his not preachy, is that he was telling the story and not trying to be like, oh, because like I feel like in the oath, I don't even feel like we get like scriptures like that, because nobody's like there's not really a Christian in This Present Darkness, and in Piercing the Darkness, yeah, because there's two pastors involved, but it's not like, and I think that also goes into saying, I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but just like the difference in that, right? I think I can't say enough about, I think it's just the way in which you choose to tell the story. Like, yeah. I feel like sometimes people go into writing faith-based stories or message-based stories with like, I gotta hammer this message in. And here's the thing. Yeah. This is the one thing that I heard about, like, being a Christian or living for God, being a follower of God, and it sticks with me, and it's the number one thing, and it's live your life for God, and minister to all the world, and if you have to, use words.
Yeah, my dad saw a sign like that. Teach the gospel every day, when necessary, use words.
Right. And I just was like when I heard it, I was like, because it's the actions. Mm-hmm. So if all you're doing is trying to hammer this thing in, you're missing all the opportunities where you could have finessed that story in and really got to the heart of the person you're trying to get to, because that's the point of a faith-based story, is you're trying to go for someone's heart.
Right. So,
yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah, and I honestly think it's not even just a Christian fiction thing. Like YA, because people are so much into Save the Cat model right now, they want to make sure that theme is stated early in the first 10%, and then we constantly see the character battling against that theme. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's preachy, but sometimes we've seen books where it's repetitive and where we're like, you could show me this, you don't have to tell me so much of what's happening. So I don't even think I think that like it gets tagged as something that's like faith-based, because there is very obviously a message and an agenda, but every book has a message. Every book has an agenda. There's a reason the writer picked up the pen, every writer, no matter what. And so I definitely agree. Have your message in mind, but don't lead with the message, because your protagonist don't care nothing about that message right now. So why would you lead with it? Like, if it's through their POV, they don't see that yet. And what I love about Peretti, I think how he avoids having character development be very like kids bop preachy type thing, is like he reveals the matrix that is already existing around people. So he is not like erecting a sort of, this is not, that's what I'm trying to say. This is not an allegory. He is not just like naming things after themes. Like, this is not a Pilgrim's Passage or whatever that famous Christian allegory is. This is not a Pilgrim's Passage. This is not, we meet Christian and he meets his friend's morality and purity, and they go through the valley. Like, this is not high places.
Like, it's not that.
Which like no shade to them. Those are genres.
No, great
story.
But
this is not that. And so when you're not working in allegory and parable, how do you have that clear of a message in a development right? Because that's something you have to sustain over time and that has to have growth. How do you have a development that doesn't seem so like on their head and in your face? And I think the way he does it is he's just like, I'm just going to let these characters make choices. The choices that make sense for where they are, not the choices that make sense if they were living a perfect Christian life. He's not focusing on perfect Christians. He's focusing on a town. Every time it's a town. And we have like maybe one or two people whose choices are super significant to how things are going to shake out. But he is focusing on a community. And within a community, you're never going to have everyone believe in the same thing at all, ever. Like, even if they all claim to be Christians, whether or not they do, right? So he allows for the multiplicity of real life people making real life choices that are individual, that are contradictory. And then he says, well, here's how that affects the matrix when we're looking at spiritual warfare for talking about this present darkness and piercing the darkness. So I think that is how, which is just another way of saying like, don't lead with the message. But I think that he reveals the matrix around people's choices and is very, very sure to have them making honest choices until they would honestly be reacting to Christ. Like he really peels back the layer of their hearts until he gets to the core, and where they get to a place of brokenness and vulnerability where they would want to really meet Christ. And so I think that's part of it, is that like, it's hard for me because I'm impatient. I want to write the gotcha scene first, but it's like, right. This is page 1 now. So like, if you don't want to write a linear story, like if you want to write, like as a writer, if you want to write the ending first, okay, sure, do you. But like
the way that Sally Beth wrote had 5 demons on her for like 85% of the book, no matter what, because they've been with her for life. She chose them. We can't.
And the angels even said like, we can't take them.
Right, we can't. They have to be there until she doesn't want them there anymore. Like it's very real to the God ain't gonna force himself on you.
Right.
It's very real to the power of prayer. It's very real to the power of your actual change. And I feel like that's the other reason that it feels good. Like that's the other reason that the message hits so hard, is because you had to watch this woman struggle, even with angels fighting left and right.
Right. And it's a prolonged struggle. Like you can't rush it. And as a writer, it's like, wow, I'm really waiting for her to like have her deliverance. And it's like, right. But like Shay said, and we're in Piercing the Darkness now, which is about a town called Bacon's Corner. And they're like the demon. What's cool is the demons operating in Bacon's Corner know what happened in this present darkness and in that town of Ashton. And whenever they hear about Ashton, they're like, what? Ashton? Where? Like they're aware because the people there now are operating in the power of prayer with your relationships. Like it's just cool to see the connectivity and the duology. But in Bacon's Corner, with Sally, like you're waiting for her because it's very clear that she is important. Like she's the piece, she's the queen. But the queen don't really want to be a queen. Like she's really just like, I ain't pressed, but like I don't want it. I want peace, but she has to come to a place where it's like, are you willing to do what you need to do to attain real peace? Because you've been trying it your way, just trying to be under the radar for a while, but you haven't had any relief. You've had a change of scenery. But I think as a writer, that showed me having to like go through with this, not even just this one character, but like many, but like focusing on Sally, having to go through and seeing how satisfying it was as a reader when she did have those encounters. And I remember Deidre being like, yo, I almost cried. Like when Sally finally went to church, met those people and was like, let's go, Jesus, me and you. I want it fully. I'm ready. I'm open. I'm available. Like the payoff means more because you have invested more in it. If 35% in, she was like, Jesus, take the wheel. It's like, this is a 20-hour book. Where you going from here? Like you really have to invest in letting them take that journey.
Jesus on page 1, how 35% in Jesus? He the one you like that?
Like you didn't know who you was before,
right?
And that's the other thing is like investing in their history with God. What has it been? So character development definitely not preachy, but it's definitely as a writer is going to be an investment of time and like character history so the reader can really be like moved by the journey, because otherwise it just seems flat and really like, of course she gave her life to God. It's Christian fiction, as opposed to like, I didn't know if she was going to do it.
Right. No, and I will say he does a good job in all 3 books with backstory.
Yes.
Like a good job of like painting a very good, precise picture of what the people were like before the start of the book. Mm-hmm. And there's so much like you understand why Marshall and Kate are having the issues they have, because they moved here for something way different than what they're getting, right? Like you are fed up with her, even though you know they both ain't really living how they need to, but you like, yes, girl, pack your bag. I get it. Like he ain't been here. Right. Exactly. Like, yeah, this story is important, but at the same time, bro, like your daughter is like really, really having some issues and I need you to pay attention. And so like, I like that. Like, I liked the accuracy of that. Like
that moment, I'm sorry, I was trying to hold my peace. That moment where Kate left him, I was like, I can't even hold you. Like, I can't hold you. They moved from New York, where he was like the chief editor and chief whoever, I don't know about newspaper terms. He was the chief editor of the New Yorker or something like that. And he was always chasing a story, never home. He has a terrible relationship with his daughter, Sandy, because he was never home, which makes her then vulnerable to all these demons of resentment and da-da-da. So again, like characters are making decisions. Peretti is revealing the Matrix. You have a bad relationship with your daughter that leaves her vulnerable to demons of resentment. She's more available to like other explanations just to spite you, that leaves you vulnerable to demons of complacency to not really fix this rift, right? So it just shows from these decisions what are the spiritual implications of that, which I loved. But that moment when Kate left him, because I think it's interesting to hold up Marshall and Kate juxtaposed to Hank and Mary. Hank and Mary are partners. Like Hank and Mary are partners, even when girl possessed with this demon of lust. What was her name? Carmen.
Yeah.
Carmen. Oh, Carmen. When she was coming in there, I almost said like a snake, but the demon did look snake-like. But anyway, she came on in their home like, I need counseling. And Mary was like, me and my husband are here to help you. And I loved it.
Or like how Mark's wife, when Donna was in the meeting and she was talking, and Mark's wife was like, honey, something ain't right. I think you should get on that. And I just was like, when you are equally yoked,
exactly.
When you are equally yoked, you're like, okay, no, we need to stop that. No,
I literally was like, equally yoked.
And the way in which the enemy had to separate them and attack them separately, because when he attacked Hank in the house and him and Mary start praying, like things started changing.
Over.
And what does he do? He has to get Carmen there while Mary is at the grocery store and send somebody on Mary, because when they're together, because when 2 or 3 are gathered, I'm just saying,
they're in the midst.
There's so much that like there's scripture there without scripture having to be there.
If you know it. So like there's multiple levels of engagement.
Right. It's awesome. I love it.
If y'all can't tell, we're all about it. I'm a new convert to Peretti, here for it. I just literally when I was watching
2 years, y'all. 2 years.
The Lord works in his own good time, amen. When I met Mary and Hank, because we've been talking a lot about general, so let's hold on to some of these characters. Hank, the praying pastor, the demons call him the praying man. Y'all, get the audiobook. The way they be saying it, they be like, the praying man. They're so proud.
Oh my God, Lucius. Oh my God. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. The angels and demons had me dying. The demons are hilarious.
They're funny. Like y'all are petty.
Lucius was like, ain't he the guy over here? Ain't he the bad?
Ain't he the bad?
He'll figure it out. He don't need us. Okay, Lucius little
petty. A house divided cannot stand. I was like, go ahead. Yeah, do that.
Right. It's just because it also goes like, it just, to know that like they act and interact in such a what we would consider human ways, but like still in all of us being in the created, the eyes of the creator, being parts of him, right? Like, because we can't act like God didn't do no petty stuff in the Bible. God was like, nah, I told you not to touch it, you just gonna disappear. Okay, I mean, all right.
I mean, I wouldn't call that petty.
I feel like, oh, dude tripped and fell and accidentally touched it, and God was like,
that's not the listen. What I say, I said I'll touch it.
I'm just saying. And Job was definitely a bet between God and the devil. I don't care what nobody say. It was definitely like, if I do,
I mean, we see that it is.
I bet he won't. I bet he won't. I bet he ain't gonna fall. I bet you can do everything but touch a head on his head, and he's still gonna. You know, I'm just saying, we are made in the image of God. Is all I'm saying.
But what I got from that actually was seeing that, like, again, the spiritual matrix behind things, the things that where it's like the demons are doing things like humans do this too. Yeah, like you're going to be operating under someone's influence. And if it's not God, it's going to be the devil. Like there are no free agent humans who aren't serving.
Oh no, I definitely got that. I just meant sort of in the way in which he wrote the angels and the demons, you get personality, you get pushback, you get people like dislike it, and in those things, right? Like you get Gilo like, hey, like we not here to bust heads.
I'm like, trying to burn it down.
Call me unless we here to bust heads.
Listen, I don't. My dude Gilo
watching. Why am I watching? And so, like, that's what I mean is that when we think of the way in which we are taught angels and demons, right? Like in the way we're taught angels, in the way like Touched by an Angel or all of the shows are, like angels don't have like thoughts and feelings. They just do orders. They just do what God tells them to do, and that's it, right? And I felt like in the story, you get personality. You get angels asking questions. You get angels being like, no, this doesn't make sense. What is the reason? I'm gonna follow orders, but I'm still gonna ask questions, right? You get that, like, in the demon world, no, they don't all agree on the same thing. It's not all how we gonna get there the same way. There's still pride and lust and all these things in them as individuals, as well as what they push on other people. And that's what I thought was like interesting. It was like, and for me, when I'm saying like personification, if we're made in the image of God, then anything that we put our attributes onto, we're doing in that. And that's what I felt like as a writer he was doing. And I liked it. I liked it because the truth is, what are demons but fallen angels, right? Like, so in the same, like,
but they're fallen for a reason.
Right, exactly, right. Like you had to have your own desires at some point to fall, right? Like to choose not to believe this or not to do this.
Right.
And that's not usually the conversation that we have about angels and demons. And that's what I like.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, Gilo was my dude. And I liked seeing the investment. Again, here's the thing. It's never not going to be hilarious to me the way those demons were talking about Hank. I'm sorry. They were so pressed. Like when you hear the audio, just the hater energy that was rolling off of them every time they spoke of Hank. The praying man. They said it just like that every time. And I was like, you big mad. You're really mad that this man is over here praying his face off. How does it feel? Are you burning? Are you burning? They would get so uncomfortable. Like, I loved it. And because again, like it drives home without being preachy, the power of prayer. You just see the cause and effect. When you're not praying, you're weaker. Angels that will be moving on your behalf are weaker. When you're praying, there's power. You're empowered. You feel stronger. Like I just loved seeing the message play out. And again, it being available to people on multiple like Bible literacies, if you will. I really liked that. But moving right along, we talked about the duology, piercing this present darkness and piercing the darkness. And in those, the protagonists were all like there are established congregations that are like that get strong, that do the work, that have prayer circles, all of this, right? That is a very particular setup when you're talking about a book talking about spiritual warfare. But I would argue there was still spiritual warfare in the oath, but you do not have a strong congregation there. And so it's interesting to think about writing Christian fiction with non-Christian protagonists. And so essentially, as like writers, we're make that a general question: how do you write a protagonist who does not buy in to the overwhelming faith of the of your world, whatever that faith is? But obviously, we're talking about Christian fiction. So the protagonist of the oath is not a Christian. Like, he doesn't really even believe in God. He certainly is not really thinking about God very deeply in the beginning. Shay, do you want to do the synopsis of the oath?
An ancient sin, a long forgotten oath, a town with a deadly secret. Something evil is at work in Hyde River, an isolated mining town in the mountains of the Pacific Northwest. Under the cover of darkness, a predator strikes without warning, taking life in the most chilling and savage fashion. The community of Hyde River watches in terror as residents suddenly vanish. Yet the more locals are pressed for information, the more they close ranks, sworn to secrecy by their forefathers' hidden sins. Only when Hyde River's secrets are exposed is the true extent of the danger fully revealed. What the town discovers is something far more deadly than anything they'd imagined, something that doesn't just stalk its victims, but has the power to turn hearts black with decay as it slowly fills their souls with darkness. Again, there's no lie. Like, what is there is what is in the story. Like, you're legitimately turns hearts black with decay as it slowly fills their souls with darkness. Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, and Shay had told me that there was an extended metaphor of a snake throughout. And it's like, oh my gosh, spoiler, but it's really not. It's really not. Because the fact that there is a snake there is certainly not irrelevant. But what is more mobilizing the plot is the way that people are reacting to the snake, and their relationship to the snake is way more of the plot than the fact that a snake exists. And so I definitely, like, it was a different experience reading the oath and reading the darkness duology, if you will. I don't know what the actual name of it is. Reading the darkness duology and reading the oath are two different experiences, because there are preachers there who are holding it down, POP. There are other like praying saints there. I'm sorry, in my head, I still heard the dude.
Said the praying man. I know. I saw it. I was like, oh, she said
so pressed. So pressed. Anyway, there are none of those here. And so, and like Cache said, there's two actually. The protagonist's sister-in-law and then the town outcast, essentially, are the only two people you get who even acknowledge God in any significant relational way. Certainly who we ever see pray or hear say, like, I'm gonna pray for you, I'm talking to God, right? These sorts of things. And it's, I mean, man, I thought I was used to Paredes hard-headed characters, but what's Walter? Was his name Walter too? What was his name?
Steve.
Oh yeah, I didn't like Steve.
Whose name was Walter? Where was there a Walter?
The newspaper man.
Marshall.
But I thought his name was Walter, and so it shall forever be my first answer to these men. Listen, what's his name? Steve. I didn't like Steve. I say Steve's name the same way the demons say praying man, hater energy. Now, am I a hater of Steve? No. Did he come full circle in the end? Sure, he did. Sure. When I tell you that was a last chapter transformation, that was a last chapter transformation. I was not sure about Steve. At that point, I was like, is he going to accidentally save the day? Like, is he going to at any point acknowledge God in any significant way? Like, literally, I was like, imagine how tired we are. I was blowing Cache up. Like, I can't stand, he's worse than not Walter. He's worse. Such a rash. and that there's an actual rash in the book on your heart, I'm just like, accurate. Now, I'm gonna have to take a little. I know that y'all haven't read the oath. You need to listen. You can check the voice message receipts. We're not on Walter. We're not on Steve now. We're adjacent to Steve. What's the cop's name? Linda? Trudy?
Tracy? Oh my God.
Tracy. You can ask Shay T. Warren. I was like, I don't like her. Me and Evelyn, my girl, what's the man named Steve? Me and Steve's sister-in-law, Evelyn, Evie. I would also send her a Christmas card. Me and Evie don't like Tracy. And at first I was like, Steve is such a butt munch. Why is he being so rude to this female cop? Wanted to like her. I was like, look, she's competent. She always trying to help you over here. But he's arrogant. I cannot stand arrogant male characters.
He did. She was really like, I don't like how you're talking to Tracy. Tracy's doing right by him. And I was like, hey, okay. So I tried to like her. So many times when she sends me stuff, I just reply, okay. Or yeah. Like I just wouldn't say nothing because I was like, you just got to get through the book.
I was aggravated. I was aggravated. I was. By how he was talking to her. And then how he was like approaching the townspeople. Did I ever like the people of Hyde Park? No, never. They struggling with this ancient sin. It got a grip on them. It's making them act weird. And it's ugly. It's ugly. I don't like them. But the fact that Tracy told him, don't go into Hyde Park, Hyde Valley, wherever. Don't go there. Acting crazy. And he was like, I got this. I'm just gonna go ask some questions. They're reasonable. They must see I was like, did you grow up there? And I just don't see it in the text because I see that Tracy grew up there. Wisdom would say, listen to the officer of the law who grew up there and has continued to work with that community. But did he know? Because Steve is not wise. He's very much like, oh, the Enlightenment, oh, scientific minds, oh, this makes sense, even if it's not wisdom. So he go in there, traipse and he get what he get. And at that point, I was still Team Tracy because she told you. But then she get a little hot to trot, and I'm just like, Now, do I like Tracy's husband? No, I don't like that man. But I don't like the way she acting towards him either. It's complex. Do I like him? No, but that ain't my husband. That is not my husband. I ain't got to stick beside him. I don't. I really don't. But you, madam, if you don't like him anymore, just say that. Stop acting like he's mistreating you. Because what I heard was, he just didn't change after we got married. Well, boo, why you marry him before he changed? Why you marry him as he was if you didn't like how he was? It's odd. Anyway, me and Evie, we don't like Tracy. So what I got from that, though, is it's a different kind of hard-headed character. A hard-headed character who will at least acknowledge God is not the same as a hard-headed character who won't even admit that God is a thing for the sake of reason and for the sake of there being, quote, no higher reality than myself. And so the oath and the darkness duology are they're still spiritual warfare, but the premise is different because there is not an established church. There's not an established group of faithful believers there to empower more. That's sort of an immediate change where we just see prayer shaking some things up in Bacon Hill. We see prayer shaking things up in Ashton. That never happens in the oath. You have to wait for Steve to come to a knowledge and a relationship with God, because the only other two Christians there are doing what they can, but they are not the ones who are going to wrap this thing up with the bow. Again, like we had to wait for Sally, we got to wait for Steve. That is the end of my TED Talk, which was admittedly mostly about me not liking Steve and Tracy. Wow. I literally was like, let me pray, because I don't have any sympathy for them. None.
So for me, I The Oath was one of like the last Peretti books I read. Like I pretty much always read like I read This Present Darkness and Piercing the Darkness every year. Just every year once at least. And then The Visitation probably like every other year, but it's gonna go back to every year. Because it's my favorite of all of his. But The Oath was like one of the last ones of his when I was like, dang, I really need to finish reading all of his backlist. And so I read it and it's so different from all the other ones because the other ones, you know, pretty much everybody is a Christian. Like the main character is a Christian, or at least going to church regularly or have some belief in God. And that's not The Oath. And what I liked about it was that we've said it's a metaphor. If you're not a Christian, you wouldn't even realize that you were being talked to about sin and God until you got to the end of the book. Because of how well he does the metaphor. And because of the one person that gives the truth is played off as a crazy person.
Right.
It's like, that's your red herring right there. Like that's your, like, listen to this man. That's your red herring. But if you don't, and you just everybody living. And so I loved that. That was my favorite part of The Oath, was realizing as someone who is a follower of God, if I wasn't a follower of God, I would have had to sit with sin and how it erodes everything, and how it starts small, and how it starts to eat at you, and how you think you've been getting away with things, and you've been
everybody sees it.
And eventually you become so complicit into it that you run to your own destruction. There's just so much about it that is so deep.
Yep.
And as a poet, as someone who loves metaphors, like I said, that book is what had me write The Mental Slavery that y'all heard in April, because I wanted to see if I could make a metaphor last a poem. Like, because I was enthralled with this idea and I want to do it for a novel. I don't know what I'm going to do it about, but I want to do it for a novel because Brady showed me it can be done.
Right. And well.
And done well.
Very compelling.
And you got dual timelines, like you got letters and stuff. You going back in time.
I really enjoyed the ephemera of it, the artifacts.
Right. The going back in time and seeing the history and people, like it was good. I don't, like I said, when we were talking about them privately, I don't know if Christian thriller is a genre, but it needs to be because he's at the top of that.
It sounds like if it's not,
y'all
it might be a ministry for you to bless. I don't.
Right. Because man, like that's how I describe him.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't even know what else there is to say. So maybe we can like talk about like lessons as writers to get from the three that we buddy read. And I feel like I've spoken 70% of the time. So I will let you start with some lessons that you got from reading these three books.
So mainly the reality of characters. I feel like these were all character-driven books.
Definitely.
And even if you didn't care about the characters,
which in The Oath I did not.
The story, right? You cared about the story. You were like, where is this going? What is going on? Why are these people acting weird? Why is everyone doing the things that they're doing? And I think that because I don't even know that he set out to write mysteries or thrillers, right? Like, I don't know that was his intention with these books,
you don't really see the hallmarks of mystery or thrillers necessarily. It just, that ends up being the overall effect.
Right. That is how he wrote it, right? Like you for me, for this present darkness and this piercing darkness, multiple heart racing moments, multiple like, dang, is she gonna get out that window? How are they gonna get there? They're chasing it.
Right.
It's stuff going on. And there is a mystery element to every single one of them. Like, what is going on? Why are they attacking these people? Why are they doing that? And I think that he does a really, really good job of hooking you into the story by giving you characters that even if you don't like them, the way that they move keep you invested in the story. And I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier. They're real characters. Like, they move like real people. They don't move like emblems of messages, right? Like, they don't move like they're supposed to stand for something. They move like they're real humans trying to do things. And I think that was that stuck out to me, because while we were reading it, I want to say I wrote like a on the spot 500 word scene for Jesus Never Went to College, and I haven't written anything for that since 2020. Right. So it's just like that. And I also think that there is something to be said about atmosphere when writing. And it's not even like his descriptions are very, I don't even think his descriptions are like very grandiose or like
they're very simple.
They're very simple. But I think that the way in which he writes sets the perfect atmosphere for the story. Like, he doesn't choose these big cities. He chooses these locations in which he can control what's going on with the story. And even when there's far-reaching things, it's still in small areas, confined to these things. I just think that it's not something that you think about normally, right? When people, because usually when you hear that people write simple locations or simple environments or simple descriptions, it's a very negative thing. But I feel like it was, again, like I said earlier, him writing for his audience. Right. Like, you know that like there are certain things you just can't do in Christian fiction, right? Because your audience are looking for specific things. Right. Not a curse word in the book, but you know people are cussing left and right when they are. Like, you know, people are saying things they're not supposed to. You know that they're doing things they're not right, that wouldn't be okay with the Christian. And I think that I also think that is, there's something to be said about writing your story the way that you want to write it. And I feel like that was also like just another reiteration as we were reading it, is like, and again, this is very different, because do I think that he could publish this book now in the same regard that it got in the late 80s, 90s? I don't think so at all. Yeah. Like, I don't think that people would read it and read what he was doing, right? Because like, as I was looking at at like a few reviews, I was like, I'm just curious of what people in general thought about this book. I saw when people were talking about like the Eastern religion and how it was like demonized, and I was like, I saw how demons used it to be something more than it was. I didn't see a demonizing of the religion. I saw the insidious nature of what doing these things happen to have, right? Because like, meditation is a biblical principle too. So meditating in itself can't be the thing that's wrong.
That was never the thing. It always went back to acknowledging no higher reality or being.
Right. I was like, I feel like that's what you're missing.
Right.
They were using these things that aren't bad in themselves and what they're doing.
Right. To undermine God.
To undermine God, to be this insidious, negative, demonizing thing, right? Like, you find out that they're practicing things in the name of demons, and they know that they're doing this, but they're not telling the other people.
They're not telling the college students that. They're just calling it Eastern religion.
They're not telling the parents, and that's what I liked about how the story was told. It was like, in the ways in which we see things in the physical realm, the spiritual implications of what's going on 100%. And what's being done, right? Like, as a kid, you can't watch Harry Potter. I never really had a desire to, right? right? But now at 30, I'm not going through all the problems that everybody else did with reading and watching and feeling some type of way about whatever's going on. Why? Because I never partook in it. Why? Because it was not something that my grandmother felt was conducive to the type of children she wanted to raise. And for all intents and purposes, it sounds like a lot of y'all idolized this story and these things. And now you have to reckon with the fact that you idolize something that should have never been put in that position to begin with. And now you have to deal with a part of yourself that you are frustrated with because this was my life. This became my personality. This got me through. And it was ahead of its time. It was before so many different things that like I see now.
Absolutely.
Like, this is prophetic. In the 80s, and this is right here. Like this makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because I've never read those books. I've never seen those movies. And I'm sure they had great themes and things in there. And I know that people grasped on the things that were great, right? But it can't be nothing but idolatry that got people really like feeling the way that they feel about these things. And there's something to be said about that. That you don't think that there was anything that played into that to make that possible, right? Because now, like the conversation is, well, if you say or do anything, you're supporting her. Well, right, because y'all gave her that power because of your idolization over something that you probably shouldn't have been partaking in to begin with. I just think it's just interesting, like how that is the story in all the stories, like things that you had no business doing and you felt you had no business doing. Like there's so many times in each of the stories you feel that the Bible says that he will always leave a way of escape. And even in these situations with these people that aren't believers in some cases, you see that there is still a way of escape. You see that there is still a way to get out of that.
Because Sally Verdoncher wasn't a believer
at all.
And he stayed rescuing her.
Steven and Tracy were like warned before they ever, like, y'all were the last people to get the black decay on your chest. It's nearly the end of the book by the time you do.
You have been spared.
You have
and
been
Tracy
spared.
Verdoncher have been spared.
Girl.
Y'all gotta read Tracy been spared all her life.
Her whole life, because girl, you've been doing the most. I was at the part this morning when she was like, because what's her name was like, oh, watch out for this when she left the trailer broken hearts, and this girl is pressed about that. She is mad. I don't know why he would say that in front of a stranger. It was like, girl.
You the SpongeBob narrator 20 hours later, they're in the car. He just had no brakes.
Right. Like, he was like, oh, you still on? He literally was like, oh, you still on that? Like, yes. Because why, girl?
That is her idol.
Right.
That is her idol. Yeah, no, you definitely see what you give the most energy to by how you react when it's under attack.
Right.
So that's what I will say. Like, I read all the Harry Potters, loved it. I love the movies. Like, when I'm reading craft books, I'm reading Writing and World Building by Timothy Hickson, and he has examples of Harry Potter in every other chapter about like the different things that she does that's well read or well done, whatever, like why it's effective. But am I pressed about anything that she does? Well, no, because Harry Potter is not my idol. I appreciate it as a contribution to the arts. But Harry, Hermione, and Ron were never my gods, and neither is she. And so it's just like any human failing will never upset my spirit because my spirit is not anchored in a human. So I think like you can, Tracy is a great example of that. You can tell what someone cares about by how upset they get when, not even when it's under attack, because nobody attacked her, which blew me. Because I'm like, y'all really just be letting Tracy walk on some stuff. Y'all really do. On so much. Y'all be letting this girl walk.
Yeah, here's the truth, right? Because if we're going to be honest, the one thing that I feel like you can't say about like this book or any of his books is they're not misogynistic. Because the way that nobody really came for her, like in the stuff that she was doing and moving, like you don't, Like outside of, I'm in, like, where am I in the audiobook now? Like chapter 10, outside of Harold Blythe's little comment, nobody has said anything about Tracy. Nobody has said anything about her. Like you literally
or
only find out because like somebody trying to warn Steve, like, hey, young, you might need to
want to back that up.
Like this is, you might not. Da, da, da.
And it was never explicitly stated to what extent or what.
Right. It wasn't a gossipy thing. Right. And I think that that's something that would be overlooked in today's society, which is odd to me because, like, no, in the 1980s, he wrote a Christian book that had multiple female characters in very prominent roles, and it was never misogynistic.
Right.
Because we get a lot of narrative that Christianity is misogynistic, right?
Right. And like Steve said some little slick stuff at the beginning where he was like, all right, little lady, where it's just like,
right, like,
but like this overbearing, like oppress you into the ground, you'll have no growth, like that kind of misogyny you didn't see. Did you see white men in positions of power, people that were like older than her, not taking her seriously? Yes, but that's really the extent of the misogyny. You don't get it. You don't get Tracy like overqualified to be sheriff and she can't be because she's a woman. That's not it. So definitely, I think that can get taken for granted for people reading it now, when it's like one in the Christian genre and two in the 80s, two tenets that we would expect to be a free-for-all for misogyny, but all based off of that, but it's not. None of the books are, because really, quiet as it's kept, had Mary not held Hank down, there were some times he would have been like, he was unsure of himself. He was like, I don't know how to do spiritual warfare. I don't know if I handled that well. I don't know what I should do. And she was like, well, what you should do, number one, is pray. And number two, you're going to learn spiritual warfare by being in spiritual warfare. And honey, I think you did a good job. Now let's pray. Like,
and the way that it was never, like, the way that it was always showcased that the truly Christian relationships were partnerships.
Yes.
That they weren't just the man domineering say something and the women don't. Like, what I love about book 2 is that it has a Black side main character. We get Bev and Ben. We get Bev and Ben. And I like that in the story, like, it is very accurate for microaggressions. Mm-hmm. It is very accurate for having to be a Christian dealing with microaggressions. It is very, very accurate for that. Like, I like that. I feel like sassy was never used to describe the wife, and I was very thankful. Mm-hmm. I like that,
especially in that time period, because it's only now that people are really starting to call that what it is, which is basically a slur.
Right. I like that. Like, no, you notice that there is a difference between the Black man and his wife and how they move and the other couples. Mm-hmm. Like, there is, because in the conversation, Bev is like, no, we're not going to act like you didn't just get fired from your job. It sounds like it has something to do with this. Mm-hmm. We should talk about it. Mm-hmm. Like, and it just, for me, it was like, this is accurate. Right. This is accurate for what my experience was living in a interracial church, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it is accurate for how people move. Yeah. And again, y'all know me. I'm the biggest supporter of don't write, stay in your lane. If you write white characters, support Black authors. Y'all know that's me, 110%. I thought this man did a decent job. Mm-hmm. But I also thought that he did a smart thing, because it was not the main character. Right. It wasn't the person you had to focus on the entire time. Right. So he wasn't in a position to have to be in this man's head.
Culturally, and do that it wasn't a lot of cultural stuff.
It wasn't that.
Ben played his role.
He played his role very well.
And that was that. Yeah. Yeah. The things that I have taken as we wrap this up, the real message is read Peretti's work. But the things I have learned as a writer is just really the value. And this is nothing that, like, I wasn't necessarily already doing, but just like to be more cognizant of it, because I see what happens when you invest in it and it works very well. Let your characters make whatever decision that you have set them up to make, which means you got to spend some time with your characters and their backstory. What have they been doing? What's important to them? And what decisions or compromises or lies have they made or told themselves to be who they are, whether it's YA or adult. Sally had told herself some lies over the years. She had made some justifications of her past over the years that she had to confront before she could give her life to Christ. You as the writer got to sit with, what are those compromises? What are those lies? What are those justifications? What are those decisions? So that you can understand what those internal demons are going to be. Even if you don't have literal demon characters on that ride in your character, inside, that's what they're wrestling with. And so I learned, like, you got to take that time to do that character backstory work, because it makes their journey richer throughout. And so when they make those decisions throughout, let them make them, and then you can just reveal the spiritual implications, as opposed to leading with a spiritual message and then being like, for example, there's a character named so-and-so and she does this, then that. Like, no, there's a character named so-and-so, she makes all these decisions, and then you reveal the spiritual implications. Like, when I was taking an, I think it was acting one in college. My acting teacher, Cookie, because you're never going to meet an acting teacher with a regular name. I have yet to. Cookie was like, when you're acting, when you're performing, you're not telling, you're revealing. If your character is sad, that should not be something that you telegraph through over obvious acting, where you're just like making this extreme sad face. What would a sad person do? You figure out that behavior and you reveal it over time. It's the same thing when you're writing. You can get, especially when you're writing narrative, like, it's very easy to get into, I'm sad, I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. You could write that. What would a sad person do, though? Like, again, to the example that Shay gave of the visitation of this character who's feeling fear but never says the word fear. When I am feeling afraid, it takes me time to admit to myself that I am afraid. In the meantime, I'm thinking a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm thinking, I don't want to do it. I'm thinking, why should I do it? I'm thinking, what are the consequences of me doing it? I'm thinking, I should watch some anime. I'm thinking, I should take a nap. I'm thinking, I'm hungry. Let me just feed myself and then take a nap because I got the itis again. And then next week, I'm like, I'm kind of scared of what could happen if I do this. Right? Like, it takes time to admit to certain emotions. Now, when I'm happy, that's very obvious to me, you, and everyone else. But when I'm feeling these negative emotions, we don't just come out and say, I'm feeling this, even to ourselves. And so, again, going into investing in what kind of character you're dealing with, do you just have a super, because like, Hank would definitely be someone to be like, okay, I'm afraid, Lord. The praying man, absolutely. He would just say that outright. But would Harold Bly, the big bad of the oath? Absolutely not. Never. So I think for me, I got a reminder of the importance of investing in your character's past so that you can enrich their present, and then really allowing the broader implications to be revealed over time. Like, really let that sit in the slow cooker and marinate, so that when it does become like obvious to the reader, it's like, oh snap, we've been cooking with this grease for the whole time. Exactly. Aren't the flavors rich? Don't you love that? That's what I got from it. Thank y'all for watching. I was super excited to do this topic because we talk about a lot of different things, but like, faith is super important to me. So just sort of processing how I have learned to enrich my own writing about faith in ways that are honest for me. Well, first, that are glorifying to God, honest for me, and compelling for my readers is definitely something that I've been like struggling with for a while. And getting to talk about sort of how I've come to a more comfortable place and how I've reconciled some of those feelings and how I've grown in some of those writing skills was a pleasure. So thanks for listening. Definitely in the comments, I guess as a comment, probably you've heard us talk about 3 different Peretti books. Which one do you think that you would want to read first? This Present Darkness or The Oath? I won't say Pierce in the Darkness because that's the second book of the duology. But based off of what we've said about this Present Darkness, which is the one where like there's a praying man, like you see angels and demons, versus The Oath, which is you don't see angels or demons. It's the extended metaphor. There's not but like 2 Christians in the entire book. Which one do you think that you would vibe with the most? Let us know in the comments. This Present Darkness or The Oath by Frank Peretti. And I will let my lovely co-host give you any outros that she may have at this present moment. Please come before the president.
Just stay tuned for what we got coming up next. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, y'all, you heard it here first. Have an amazing day, and we will see y'all later. Bye-bye.